Hi guys, welcome back to the Forgetful Scholar, and this week we're going to chat about a book. One book this week, but look how thick it is. And this is a library book. So there is that. Because this is sort of a new genre, not really a new one, but it's a genre I don't like very much. Like there's been some books, some authors I enjoyed in this genre. It's fantasy or high fantasy, not romantasy, not YA, but like Tolkien-esque fantasy book. And I always find if you have access to a library, whether it's physical or digital, I find that it's a really great place to discover new authors, try out new genres. I forget who it was who said this, but like they were like, well, if you only like romance, only read romance. Don't like read other genres. Why would you? And it's like, well, no, because if you try out new genres, you might find you like new genres. And it's not just genres, like it's not just genres, because different authors handle the same genre differently. They have different voices, right? So one author, you might not like the way their story, their voices in that genre, but you might like another, right? And it's, I don't know, broadening your horizons, I think, is never a bad thing, right? So I do not agree with that. I think if you're curious, go try out a new genre. Again, if you have access to a local library, that would be the great place to start. That's what I do. Because this book is fantasy or high fantasy. It's not romantasy. It's not YA fantasy. It's like fantasy. And I haven't had much luck in that genre. It's sort of like my least favorite. I think horror is like just under it, just a little bit. And even then, I found some books that I liked that were in the horror genre as well. You know what I mean? So I'm just saying, like, don't be afraid to try new things. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's fine. And don't listen to when people are like, oh, well, you only read romance or you only read fantasy. Well, don't read anything else. And it's like, because you're not going to like it. It's like, no, you don't know. How do they know? They ain't you. Don't listen to that. Try something new. Have fun. You know? So this is a fantasy. It is that's what, and also I got it at the library because this author kind of went a little crazy on Reddit. Honestly, not as bad as other authors during the pandemonium. But still, you know, there was criticisms for one of his book series that I really, really love. And he just seemed to like dig his heels in more. So I'm like, okay. So I got the Jim Butcher, the Olympian Affair, Cinder, Spires. Okay, so I got that from the library. It's a library book, you know. So I was really curious about it, but I wasn't sure if I wanted to like I wasn't sure if I wanted to give Butcher my money. So I was like, okay, let me try in the library. And I looked on Twitter. I'm never going to call it X. I looked on Twitter to see what he said, because I thought it was on Twitter, but it was on, my friend told me it was on Reddit, and then she told me what he said. One, about how he was criticized because all the women in his books are gorgeous, and then I looked at her and I was like, name one book where the woman's not written to be gorgeous. Like, I thought that was a silly criticism, because silly in the fact that I could think of 3 characters in 4 books who are described as plain Jane. 2 of those are romance novels and 2 of those are steampunk books. And those are in the hundreds and hundreds of books I've read. And the majority of the books I've read are female. Like I think 95% of the books I've read are female authors. So I thought that was a little silly. The other criticism about him making someone of the Jewish faith the sword of God, or, you know, in his Dresden Files series, that was fucked up. That he should have listened to people who were like, hey, we don't like that. Instead, he like dug his heels in. And I'm like, I mean, I don't know, right? That's so stupid. He should have apologized. He should have listened, you know? But I guess it's a good thing he didn't give a false apology. I don't know. I don't even know what I'm talking about. And it's like, I kind of get a little upset that the world we live on, someone meaning their apology is like gold stars. Like everybody should mean, when they make an apology, that everybody should mean it. You know what I mean? I don't know if I'm making sense. Bottom line, he should apologize, and it's fucked up he didn't. Yeah, alright, cursed. Alright, well, whatever. I was trying really hard not to curse in this video. 5 minutes in. And that's the reason why I didn't just buy this book, because I am a huge fan of the Dresden Files, the urban fantasy he wrote. I love Harry Dresden. The last 3 books, not my cup of tea, but the other books I really enjoy those books, right? So I was really curious about this one, and I think this one is a continuation of his other fantasy series. At least that's what it says in the acknowledgments. But I will say, I didn't feel like I was lost. So you could read this one without reading the other series and be fine. Like, obviously there was hints of that this was a bigger story, or there was backstory I didn't know, or like backstory I wasn't shown, but this story stood alone in itself, okay? So since this only came out in November of 2023, it was only a handful of months, I am going to try to do a non-spoiler review, and then when I get into the spoilers, I'll let you guys know, okay? So my non-spoiler review, and again, fantasy, not my jam. I find more times out of not, when I give it a try, like 9 times out of 10, I don't like it. I will say I would give this book a solid 4. I hate to say it, 'cause I had so much fun in this book. I had so much fun. So I will say I was kind of, because I only really read his Dresden Files, and the Dresden Files, I'm going to try not to talk to them about the Dresden Files nonstop in this review, but okay. The first sentence or first paragraphs were really punchy, and they kind of just pulled you really right into the story, right? I think the 5th book, I think it's the 5th book, that has like my favorite opening line, the house is on fire and it's not my fault, you know? So this one does not start like this. This one, very slow start. So for the first third of the book, I was like, ooh, I'm not having fun, but I could think of 6 to 7 of my friends that are gonna love this book. So it's about aeronauts and people live in spires. There is spires up in the sky. It kind of made me think of the Jetsons, how they lived above the clouds and then the earth down there, right? People do live on the earth, but it seems like more monsters and more Wild West and things like that. We are in 4 people's POVs. Colonel Espina, who is from the Aurora Spire, and I wish the different spires, which are kind of like countries, if I'm understanding this, had a different, like, so many of them started with an A. So, Colonel Spina from Aurora Spire. We had Captain Grimm, who is sort of a pirateer, because he was in the military of Avalon, but kind of got drummed out, but he still works for the leaders of Avalon. So like more makes me think of a pirateer. Duchess Abigail, who's from Avalon, and Sergeant Bridget, who's from Avalon. So this story is Avalon and Aurora. I'm so bad at saying that word, Aurora. That and Orony, like, which always sounds like something else. I can't say those words. Anyway, are on the brink of war, right? They're not quite there yet, but tensions are really high. I will say that all the female characters, from main character POV to 3rd tier characters, the females, I love them. Each one of them were complex, interesting, were like, they didn't feel cardboard. They felt more than one-dimensional. They intrigued me. And even the ones that are the bad guys and really the bad guys, I loved hating them. You know what I mean? Like, and this isn't really a spoiler because we hear about Cavendish in the prologue. And I will talk about this book as if this is a standalone, because again, I didn't read his other fantasy books. And even without reading those, I really love this. So if you didn't read those and you're curious about this one, I really had a good time and I didn't feel like I missed out on anything, right? So Cravendish is mentioned in the prologue. She's horrible and I love to hate her, right? She's such a bad guy and a good bad guy, right? Like in the beginning you think she's crazy and then at the end you kind of get her justification. Her justification does lead to this being like a bigger bad guy in the shadow type things, which I love that shit. I love that shit. Like the bad guy, like another bad guy puppet master that you don't know yet. I love that shit. Anyway, was still batshit crazy, but understandable batshit crazy. Like I got why she did the horrible thing she did, and I got why she thought it was necessary, and I still hated her guts. And I had so much fun hating her guts, right? Gwen, who is the EXO for Grimm, I love her. Me and her, twinsies. Like I'm just as bloodthirsty. I'm just as impatient. Like I deeply bonded with Gwen, which is so silly because she's like a secondary character. But I was like, girl, you and me have same thoughts. Same thoughts. Love it. Even Bridget, I thought was just going to be the comic relief because in this universe, and if you read any Jim Butcher, you know he's a cat guy, right? My sister has some of the funniest cats ever, but anyway, so in this universe, some people can speak cat, and Sergeant Bridget, can speak cat fluently, and she's always with the cats, and I thought she was just going to be the comic relief because there's a lot of heavy stuff going on in this book. Not heavy stuff in need of trigger warnings, but some like horrific stuff that happens in war kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Because if you really sit and think about it, it's really horrible, right? And so the tone of the book kind of has that heaviness to it, like people on the brink of war, you know. So I thought the cats were just the comic relief. I was proven wrong, which I love when that happens. Well, in book, in real life, that drives me nuts. But in the book, I love when that happens. But I was incorrect because Bridget ends up with everybody else at the third act. And she actually very level-headed and saves a lot of people's lives. You know what I mean? So that was really cool. Now, Duchess Abigail. When she first showed up, I just didn't like her. I thought she was like a spoiled royal, right? Because in this world, it kind of loosely, the social structure made me think loosely of like the Regency era, but not so much because it didn't seem to be an issue that women were in the military and things like that. So when she first showed up, I thought, oh, spoiled royal. Turns out she's a spy. And like when I figured that out, oh, I loved her so much. Like she's so clever and like how she's trying to prevent the war, like by the shadows and how she verbal chess, like she basically plays verbal chess with like the enemy and it's so good. And the decisions she makes, even though they're fucked up, I understand why she makes them, right? And you understand her thought process. You might not agree with it, but you get why she did it, right? Why she does these things. And her character is very stable. You know, like I love that the characters are stable because sometimes in books, like the character seems to be one thing and then they switch into a whole different other person, you know, and you kind of wonder like, well, did the author put it down, come back to it and kind of forget what kind of personality they're putting into these things, right? Captain Grimm, I really liked him. Lately, I've been really liking like protagonists that are cool under pressure, are very logical. They have emotions, but they don't let the emotions rule them, which is weird because that's not me at all. So it's like such a different than me, you know, so I really enjoy that. And Grimm is that. He's very cool under pressure. He's very intelligent. He can like switch on a dime. Like, okay, this is not working. Let's try this. When a weird thing happens, he like rolls with it. You know what I mean? And I love that him and his best friend Alex, who's like part of the noble house, you get their backstory, why they're so close, like in Brotherhood. And I love that. And Alex is Avalon's best duelist, you know what I mean? They're both short kings. It seems to be they're both short kings. And I kind of love that, you know what I mean? I kind of love that, like, when people came up to them, whether they were, like, enemies or allies, they're like, oh, I thought you would be taller. You know, and I kind of love that, you know? Go short kings, that's great, you know? Colonel Espina, so fascinating. Because he's on the Aurora side, right? And it really kind of drives home that wars are declared by, like, you know, the presidents or the kings or whatever, but they're fought by men, and men that might not agree with what their country's doing, but are kind of stuck in this I should follow orders, I'm supposed to follow orders kind of mentality. And he's from basically the slums in Aurora, and he doesn't want to go back to the slums. And he feels like this responsibility to his men. You know, like, he's a very honorable person. And seeing him, in his point of view, wrestled with that was really good. Like, I ate it up. Okay, so I loved it. The beginning was a little boring, but that's kind of it seems like that's fantasy, right? It starts off a little slow. That seems to be how it is. Even then, I thought, like, man, so many of my friends will love this. Aeronauts, pirates, interesting magic that's more like psychic ability than magic. You know, I should really recommend it to them, you know? So that's my non-spoiler. And here comes the spoiler alerts, okay? So if you don't want spoiler alerts, this is it for you. Thank you. I hope I see you next time, okay? Spoiler alerts. Aurora is up to some shit, right? They are not playing by rules of combat, right? They're doing war crimes, okay? So, basically, I'm not going to tell you everything because I think the end was a lot of fun, twists and turns, and I don't want to give that up, right? But Grimm goes to Aspire because, like, I don't know, they had, like, a mission or something for Avalon, and they find that the Spires completely gone. Men, women, children, babies, everything is gone except for a little herd of cats, or a mistrust of cats. Is that a clouder of cats? Right. Fuck it, a group of cats. And they had to bring the cats home to Bridget because no one really is fluent in cat, because they're witnesses, right? And in this world, there are humanoids, I guess. They don't really describe them anything but humans. Warrior-born, that kind of made me think of Thundercats and, like, Lion-O and Chitara. Pictures, you know. And etherealists, which I'm just going to call them ethers, which are, like, the magic people, but it seemed much more grounded in almost, like, psychic ability, which I thought was interesting. So they take the cats back home because this colony's gone. Everything's gone. Women and children, gone. Like, no one's there. It's like Roanoke. What the hell happened, right? If you don't know about Roanoke, it's a fascinating American folklore. Go look it up. Crazy. Anyway. And that's where Bridget comes in because she is fluent in cat, right? So the party's kind of split off. So the cats are going to tell them what happened, but you got to do something for them first. The cat's hilarious in this, by the way. And exactly what I would think cats would be like. Especially Roll, who is, well, Bridget's his human. He's the prince of the cats in that spire. And Bridget is his human. Thank you very much. Like, exactly what I think cats would be like. Hysterical. And it was a nice bit of levity in this very heavy topic, right? Now, the prologue was not necessary. Do I think the book earned its length? Actually, yeah, I did. Because there was no point where I think things weren't unnecessary, except for the prologue, but I'll talk about that in a minute, or slow. You know, so I was really impressed by that. Now, the prologue, you know, when you read a book and the prologue or the epilogue kind of feel, it's not that the writing style's different, but you kind of get this feeling that, oh yeah, the publishers definitely made them do that. That's kind of what the epilogue felt like. I don't know if it is an offshoot of the continuation of this series that I haven't read. I'm not sure. But like, I kind of wish it wasn't there. We did get a lot more of Espina's, but we do get his character throughout the book, you know? So that wasn't really necessary. And we're not told his character, we're shown his character, which I really liked, so I didn't think it was necessary. And it did kind of take some of the mystery of what is going on away, right? So I think without it, I think the reader would have had to been like, well, what's going on? I'm so invested. How did this colony disappear? You know? Because the prologue pretty much tells you it was the Aurorans, those people, the Rose, they did it, right? So that was unfortunate. I wish that wasn't there. And it's only like 5 pages, but still, I think it would have been a lot more compelling without that. But the rest of like the over 600 pages, I could not put it down. It took me like 4 days to finish it, and that's including work and getting sick. Yeah, I got sick again. I have a food allergy, and I accidentally ate that food. It's not as bad as like a peanut allergy, but I was kind of hugging the toilet for a couple days. That being said, I finished this book in like 4 days. I couldn't put it down once I got like into the middle of the first third, I could not put it down. It's so much fun. And I'm not a fantasy girly, so please understand, if you are a fantasy girly or guy, or, you know, fantasy buddy, I don't know, how much you probably would love this, you know? Because I'm pretty harsh on things I don't like. I'm pretty harsh on things I like. I'm just a harsh person. I'm a bitch. Anyway, so they kind of split off. And I enjoyed the cat section because it did, again, add some levity. I don't think the prologue was necessary. So, and there is a lot of... Jim Butcher's very good with dialogue. You have to give him that. Like him, hate him, whatever. He's very good at dialogue. He's good at making dialogue. Because a lot of dialogue could be wooden, could be mechanical, especially in this Regency-esque culture. You know, it's very easy for it to seem boring, and, you know. I will say that did not happen in this book. This book, the dialogue was smooth, it was believable, and I enjoyed it. And it was very clever. Like, the people, you could tell by their speech and how they reacted that everyone, good side, bad side, everyone, very intelligent people. You know, so basically, I feel like Butcher did a good job of making a lot of these scenes not feel like we're being told what's going on, but essentially we are being told what's going on, but it just didn't feel like that. So we are with the Avalon side, right? And they're basically talking about how this could be war, basically telling us what's going on, right? But it really did feel like just a brainstorming session, and you're just like eavesdropping on a brainstorming session. And I was like, wow, that's very cleverly done, right? Because when I'm told something in the book, I'm like out of it. I'm like, ugh, why do you have to do this, right? Very easily. So the fact that I didn't feel that kind of like, ugh, until I finished the book and realized that there were some parts when, you know, Abigail was talking to people, or when Grimm was talking to people, or when Sergeant Bridget was talking to people, that I'm basically being told the possible plot, but it felt like impossible because it felt like they were brainstorming, you know, what was going on and what they had to do. Okay? So because of the 2 swords on the cover, basically Avalon is sending their ambassador to Olympia. And Olympia is basically merchants, and they want to get Olympia on their side because, believe it or not, wars are won and lost on supply chains. Like, it's, you know, so they want Olympia on their side because they know a war is coming with Aurora, right? And I know I'm pronouncing that word so weird, I can't help it. Anyway, so they're sending their diplomat, who happens to be Gwen's dad, and they're also sending Alex, who is their head dueler. He's also part of like the noble family kind of stuff, right? And Abigail's boyfriend, they're so loved, very cute. Anyway, right, they're sending him because on the Aurora side, they're sending who they thought was a diplomat, and they're sending their head duelist, who is a warrior born, who has won 300 duels, right? And Alex already hates his guts because he basically said this guy is a murderer. He just does it during duels, so it's legal, right? And already by this point, with the 4 POVs, I'm on the Avalon side. Even without the prologue, I would have been on the Avalon side, just because the difference in how they treat their warrior borns, right? So on the Avalon side, Bridget's boyfriend's a warrior born. No one blinks at that. Everyone treats the warrior borns respectfully, like they're just people, you know what I mean? And on the other side, Espina, his warrior born, I think it was Cicero, apparently he had to get to a certain class called hero before his muzzle was taken off. And I was like, what the fuck? Fuck you. You know what I mean? So there's that. There's that. And honestly, like, I totally ship Cicero and Espina. They would be cute. Anyway, so, you know, there's a difference in that. Although I really liked Espina, so I was like, oh man, I hope Espina's gonna live because he seems like a really good guy stuck in a kind of bad situation. So anyway, everybody knows, oh, if Alex duels the warrior born, there's gonna be war. You know what I mean? So they send Abigail there to make sure that doesn't happen. Grim is sent because him and Alex are besties to make sure that doesn't happen, right? I just realized this video is probably gonna be long. Sorry about that. Because I like how Alex is this head dueler who's very much a gentleman, but is so hot-tempered. I kind of like that he has that huge flaw, right? He's so hot-tempered, right? And I don't blame him for getting pissed off with what happens, but like, I was like, I kind of loved it, right? Because up to this point, he seemed like one-dimensional, right? And then all of a sudden, he's like, I'm gonna fucking kill him. And I was like, hello, we love to see flaws. How you doing? You know what I mean? I kind of, reading it, I even told my friend, I was like, I bet Grimm's gonna end up, you know, in the duel, which I was correct. That duel's happening, like 2 duels are happening at once, right? So the thing is, like, Alex is like, yeah, I'm not gonna let him push me into a duel, but the warrior born knows what he was doing, right? And he does something to Abigail. No trigger warnings are necessary. This is a very clean book. But, like, yeah, he's going to be pissed. And this is where I, like, really loved Abigail, right? So she's, again, this part's spoilers. So she's in the salon. So that's where, like, women, like 1800, things like that. Well, I think y'all dating back all the way to the Renaissance. Yes, I think so. Anyway, would get together and just have like a girls moment, you know, where they could socialize without men being around, things like that, right? So it's only supposed to be women, and Abigail's doing her spy thing, you know, and the ethers, I'm just gonna call them ethers because etherealist, I'm like, no, the ethers, who are the psychic magic people, sent someone as well, and Miss Foley, who I like, who is an ether from Grimm's crew, they basically tell her, like, hey, this ether likes to control people's minds, right? They like to make them, like a compulsion, right? So they go with her to kind of protect her mind. So the psychic wasn't able to make Abby do what she wanted to do, which was great, right? But the psychic was in cahoots with Aurora. And the warriorborn comes up, slaps Abigail till she fell on the floor, right? Slaps her, she falls on the floor. And Abigail's internal, like, devastation that she knew Alex was going to fight him now. She knew that she was used against her love was so well written, right? I loved it. And Abigail knew what this would look like, knew that the rumors were have it, like, Avalon's a duchess was slapped and she was on the floor and like a victim, and you know, Avalon is so weak. So Abigail gets up, slaps the ether, and challenges her to a duel. So she changed the narrative, right? So it doesn't look like Avalon is weak. it looks like Aurora attacked unprovoked, and Avalon is like, fuck you, bitch. Fuck you, bitch. So I was like, oh yeah, go Abby, right? So the two duels are happening at the same time. And the one duel with Abby and the Ether's champion, which is a Warriorborn, and then stuff happens, and Grim ends up fighting Avalon's Warriorborn, right? And it happens at the same time. And I was so like, oh, such good tension. I loved it, right? And I will say, the two duels end very differently. And Abby's duel, she's so classy, right? And she knows how to control the narrative, bitch. Oh, so good. And then on Grimm's and that Warriorborn's duel, because Alex is like, you don't know how to duel. And he's like, well, no, someone said to him, maybe it was the Warriorborn, I don't know. Someone was like, you don't know how to duel. And he's like, no. Internally, he's like, I don't know how to duel. I know how to kill. Because he's a soldier. You know what I mean? And I love that line. I was like, ooh. And that's just it. And like, Grim is, again, very logical. He is very cunning. He can make a plan. He could turn that plan on its head, right? And I forgot to mention the Pikers, which are like a group of mercenary kind of pirates, right? And they're like, the colony that was destroyed, they also had colonies destroyed. So they want to enter the war against Aurora because they're very protective of their people, right? I forgot to mention them. Sorry. They were fun. I just forgot to mention them. So Grim does... Abigail watched the Warriorborn do another duel before his duel with Alex, right? And you see exactly what the Warriorborn does. He incenses, like, makes his opponent so angry that they kind of, go after him without a plan, without finesse, because they're so angry, right? So, and again, we know our short king, Alex, huge temper, right? So she's like, he's gonna die, right? And Alex and Grim their brotherhood is so sweet, right? They're just like, ride or die for each other, right? But the thing is, the Warriorborn's tactic of making his opponent angry, it doesn't work on Grim. Because even though he's nervous and angry inside, he doesn't show it, right? So he's not getting angry. I mean, he has the anger, but he knows how to control himself. You know what I mean? It doesn't let him control him. But the Warriorborn is getting, like, frustrated because Grim's not reacting to his taunts. Grim's not reacting to any of it, right? And Grim had a plan that even though it sacrificed something of his, it was a plan he knew could win. And, spoiler, it did. And it was like a pretty gruesome win, but I loved it. Because it showed who Grim he's cunning, he's logical, but like he is a killer. You know what I mean? Like, not only did he kill the Warriorborn? I'm trying to remind myself that warned you guys already. This is going to have spoilers in it. But like, he chopped off his head and threw it, overboard. Which I was like, the bloodthirstiness in me was like, oh, I loved that. I really did. So I loved both duels. I loved it, right? And then they all the storylines kind of, maybe not connect at the third act, but they're all sort of in the same conflict at the third act, right? And I loved how Bridget, she wasn't physically able to help anybody because she, through interesting circumstances, was injured. And her boyfriend, Bernard, and the captain on the ship that took them to Olympia, because they had intel from the cats, right? They were planning, basically sacrifice themselves so she would be all right. And she's like, hey, idiots, no, this is what we're going to do. And she came up not only with a plan, but also a plan to help the people, the civilians around them, right? So I love that. And I thought that was an interesting part of Bridget we haven't seen at this point, because we saw her basically a cat minder, right? Cat babysitter. And then in one conflict where she got hurt. And it was interesting because like Rawl the cat prince was so furious that this creature dared hurt his servant that like it went after him, and that was great, right? But it was a nice part of Bridget's personality. And I was like, oh yeah, because she's a sergeant. So that's nice. You know, I kind of got reminded that she is a sergeant in their military. I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay. Oh, you know. Now, the end conflict was so good. It was so good. I really liked it. And it was so interesting because it kept going between Espina and Grimm's point of view, and it was so fascinating. And I love how Grimm and Espina are both like gentlemen of their word, right? So, oh, so good. I don't want to give too much, okay, because I did do some spoilers, but those weren't major plot spoilers. Even though you might think the duel spoilers were major plot, because where one side thought the duels were important, the other side was like, nah, they're not important, bro. They're distractions, you know? So, I'm thinking that I have to stop now before I give far too much away. Yeah, I should. But I'm not a fantasy girly, but I had so much fun. And like, court intrigue really isn't something that I usually get so into, but I got into it. And I think it's because the characters were well done and fascinating. And they were more than one-dimensional, so I really felt for them. Including Espina, who's supposed to be on the bad guy side. Like, his internal conflict between his duty and what was right was so good. So good. Oh, like, I kind of hate that it was this good. Like, legitimately, I'm like, oh my god, am I a fantasy girl? Still, I'm like, oh shit, like, am I gonna have to read his older ones? Is this gonna be a series that I'm gonna devour? I don't know. I really don't know. Okay, so that's it for today. Again, Jim Butcher, The Olympian Affair, the Cinder Spire from my local library. Yeah. 4 stars, you know? I think if you enjoy this type of fantasy, you probably even give it a higher ranking. It's just, for me, the beginning was a little slow. But again, even when I read the slow beginning, I was like, so many of my friends are going to like this book. So that was just personal taste, you know? So I don't want to, but it's time for me to get back to the real world. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye.